What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Enjoying the Review. I'm your host, incomparable Zach Jones. I can't even speak. And on today's show, I'm going to be reviewing and recapping the long-awaited season finale of Daredevil Born Again. Specifically, Daredevil Born Again, Episode 9, entitled Straight to Hell. But guys, before we go straight to hell, why don't we go straight to heaven by clicking that subscribe button, giving me a thumbs up, leaving some nice comments, or even bad ones. I don't mind a little criticism. You can also give a 5-star review, hopefully. You can listen in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. And you can follow me on social media, either on Twitter at Zach Jones Live, ZachJonesLive, or on Blue Sky at Enjoying the Review. All right, guys. So the big question is, did this finale, season 1 finale of Daredevil Born Again, did it land the plane successfully? And I got to say, for the most part, yeah, I think it did. I rather enjoyed this episode of Daredevil. In fact, I am going to give it an 8 out of 10. So first, I'm going to hit the high points of what I liked and a couple things I didn't. There's one thing I think could have been better, and one thing that, being honest, kind of annoyed me. But a lot of good stuff in here as well that I will touch upon. And then after that, I will get into the nitty-gritty details of the episode. So spoiler alert, guys, right off the bat, let's get into it. So the first thing that struck me really about this whole season, but especially in this finale, and this is somewhat luck-based, the timing of this show to come out right now. Because as many of you know, this show kind of in development for a long time because they shot some of it and just watched it and decided, ooh, it's not exactly what we want. So they retooled some things that took even longer to get out. And so, at the time they wrote this, they had no idea that Trump was going to win re-election, right? And especially that things just, 3 months into his presidency would be looking like they are now. And listen, whatever side of the political aisle you're on, the parallels here are undeniable. You turn on your TV set now, you're going to see people thrown in cages without due process. You're going to see people, places, authority doing shady things with money. Just authoritarian fascism actions in general that are mirrored by the Wilson Fisk character. And, it made for me this season, and especially this episode, much more resonant. And again, a lot of that is luck. That the show came out later than originally intended. I think this was, when they wrote it, probably kind of a commentary on the first Trump administration. Maybe thoughts of where it could go if you want to get in. And, here we are. So, and you're probably like, well, it's not a 1-to-1. We're not under, martial law yet. And I would just say, give it time. We're getting there. We're only 3 months in, so we'll see. But yeah, there's no denying this show means more because of current world events. It just it does. It's more resonant, at least to me. I'll let you guys comment down below and see what you think. But I definitely think it is. So we get the return of Karen. One of my big critiques of the, first episode of the season was, they made a big deal about Foggy and Karen coming back, and then immediately, well, Foggy's dead, Karen's going away to another city. I was like, and I still think that was a bad decision. But glad to have her back here. I really like Deborah Ann Woll as an actress, and I think this show is just always better with her in it. So, I'm hoping season 2 um, just has her all the way through. And I wasn't sure if we would get it, but I'm glad we did. The return of Frank Castle again in this episode, and we got to see him punishing some people. And we got the scene I was hoping for, which was Frank, breaking the news to these Punisher wannabes that he's not them, and you know they, they they're pathetic in their co-opting of his symbol, and they don't really know um, what they're talking about. Um, you know, I still think the dialogue between him and them maybe could have been a little better, but I still like the scene. I still like the scene, what it represents. I thought it was well done. Um, so for me, those are kind of the highlights of the episode. I do have two kind of picadillos though. One is just the action in general. So I mentioned, that first episode, that fight with him and Bullseye, I thought was pretty bad. Lots of, bad CGI like smoke and effects. And, throughout the season, we've seen better fights. At least they relied less on CGI. They were nowhere nearly as good as the action in the Netflix version of the show, but it didn't offend me as much as that original fight. The action in here, I think, was fine but unremarkable, and I want them to, I hope, give more time and budget to the fight scenes going forward, because that was one of the things that made the Daredevil Netflix show so good, and we're missing that now. So get rid of the CGI. I'm not saying you can't use CGI here and there. They probably did it in the Netflix version as well, but more practical fights, and also the action in here. Lots of quick cuts, lots of kind of like just muddy action. I don't think it was particularly well done, and so that's kind of one of my major critiques of this season as a whole. It's just the action. It's not where it should be, in my opinion. Get it back to the, Netflix quality, and I will be happy. And you don't even necessarily have to do like the extended, like, not really one shots, but uh, well hidden cuts that make it look like a one shot. You don't even have to do those. But more practical and less quick cutting. Let us see the action. Good choreography. It just it made the Netflix version of the show more special and stand out more. And I want to see this version get back to that as well. Because as far as the other stuff, I think they're doing pretty good. The dialogue stuff, I could use a little more courtroom drama, that aspect of Matt. But I'm really liking most of the other stuff. I think they just need to get the action down. Okay, but that brings me to my one big annoyance of this episode, and I guess it involves action, which is the Kingpin killing Commissioner Gallo scene of him just basically ripping his jaw like off of his head. It's very gruesome. But my thing is, Kingpin should not. I'm fine with him being a big, strong boy. Don't get me wrong. He should be. I have a problem when he does things that only a metahuman can. He should not be a metahuman. In my opinion, he did things in the season finale of Hawkeye, and now this move here. where I'm just like, we cannot now believe that he's just a regular human being. He's got to be a metahuman, and I don't like that. And you can say, oh, it's just um, enhanced reality, but no, I Daredevil should be more grounded, and he should be like, why not just have him snap his neck? That would have been fine. I would have had no problem. Actually, for a while there, when he was squeezing his heads, I thought his head was just gonna like explode like that guy in Scanners. But they did it a little bit differently. But I was like, I really didn't like that scene. It was just too over the top. You could not, it takes some specialness away from what should be a very grounded show that you can, for the most part, believe if you could get past, what the any superhero thing, a guy in a mask, fighting crime. But yeah, that scene, it just annoyed me because I'm like, come on, don't make him so powerful. Um, but yeah, those are kind of my big pluses and minuses of the show. And with those out of the way, guys, let's get into the nitty gritty and talk about the episode. So this episode starts off with a flashback to 1 year earlier, and Vanessa is talking to Bullseye in prison, and basically she gets him released from prison, and in exchange she wants him to kill a thief named Benjamin Cafaro and his lawyer Foggy Nelson. She says that the case he's involved in would shine an unwanted light on her business practices, and she says she's come to him because he's the best at what he does and not because of her husband. But Bullseye's like, Fisk is always involved. I did find it interesting here that Bullseye is seemingly reluctant to do this. Usually in the comics, he's portrayed just as like a straight up psychopath who enjoys hurting people. But here it seems like they're giving him a little more depth, making him like somewhat regretful of his past actions and not wanting to just be a killer for hire, even though he does ultimately agree to it. So yeah, he begrudgingly signs her paper and agrees to the deal. So end of last episode, the cliffhanger was Matt took a bullet for Fisk. He got shot. So now he's waking up in the hospital, and he's greeted by both Heather and Kirsten. So Matt asks about Bullseye, and they say that he's still at large. He tells them that Vanessa was the one that ordered the hit on Foggy, and he asks Kirsten if she can get him access to the case that Foggy was working on. So now we move over to a scene with Wilson and Vanessa, where basically Wilson just says, I know. He's telling Vanessa, I know what you did. You hired Bullseye to take out Foggy. And he holds her hand. So, they're in it to win it. So Kirsten says she remembers Foggy was going to file a motion to dismiss the case he was on. And Matt says he needs to get out of the hospital and find that motion to dismiss. He's going to bust the case wide open. So Fisk tells, we move back. Fisk tells Vanessa that she moved millions through Red Hook. And now that he is mayor, he can move billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. So, last episode he kind of, alluded to the fact that Red Hook, could be even more than she knows. So now we get to reveal it. And we'll get, of course, more in this episode about, why they're using that port. So Matt tries to tell Heather how dangerous Fisk is, and she says that she will come back after he's had time to rest. I should also mention when he was first waking up, he said Karen's name, which I think is to plant both some, maybe a seed of destruction in him and Heather's relationship, but then also let us know that, hey, maybe he does still have feelings for Karen. So we get a scene where Fisk tells his task force he wants them to hunt Bullseye and all vigilantes, and here we go. He wants no body cams, no due process, no warrants. I almost think this might eventually give, obviously they're already do the no due process thing. Would anyone be surprised if in the next couple days, like, certain cities start shutting off body cameras for cops? It wouldn't surprise me. So when Gallo protests, he protests what Fisk just said, and he's like, "What's next? You're going to condone the use of lethal force?" And Fisk is like, "No, I'm not condoning it. I'm encouraging it." And he also wants to close the bridge and tunnels, which of course will trap everybody there. Fisk asks Buck about Matt's condition, and he says that he is stable and recovering in Metro General. So Fisk tells Buck that it will help their story if Matt succumbs to his wounds that he received while trying to save the mayor. And he says, in this case, a dead hero is better than a live vigilante. So, he's telling Buck, hey, go murder Matt, basically, while he's in the hospital. I will say one thing that I find hard to believe is that Matt's identity is secret at all, because at this point, Fisk has told enough people Daredevil is Matt that it seems like it just has to get out. Maybe that's something that'll happen next season. And that did happen in the comics. However, I never think that's a great idea for the most part. It did work well for Iron Man. But like the street level heroes, I don't know. I like them to maintain their secret identity, but I'm just kind of like here. I'm like, too many people know, I think, that Matt is Daredevil. So Kirsten tells Matt she's glad he's okay, but they are going to have a serious conversation when he's better. I think this is definitely, leading to Kirsten. I think both Kirsten and Heather are going to find out that Matt is Daredevil. In the mayor's office, Fisk tells Sheila to fire everybody who is not completely loyal to him. So again, where in the real world have we seen this before? Where a guy in a high, powerful position just wants nothing but loyalists in his cabinet. Total fiction, right? And then he meets with a guy from the power company, which will be explained shortly. So Buck arrives at the hospital with the intentions of killing Matt. But we get the scene where Matt can hear him coming. This is one thing, and it's in the comics too, where Matt's hearing is so good, and I guess his smelling probably to an extent too, where like just by footsteps and heartbeats, he knows everybody's heartbeat is unique. Everybody's footsteps are unique. It seems implausible. It seems like most people, unless they have a heart condition or something, would not be so distinct that he could pick them up from that far away without, it's one thing if he hears them speak a word, right? But I don't know. It's a little far-fetched, but, it's true to the comics. And what? So I guess I'll let it slide. So we get a scene where Gallo runs into Sheila and says they need to talk. And Sheila, even though she's doing the bidding of Fisk, you get the sense that she's uncomfortable with the things Fisk is doing. So Gallo tells her that Fisk, he suspects Fisk made crime spike by getting, his criminal buddies, to commit crimes. And that gave him an excuse to build the task force and use them as his own personal militia. He says that there are still sane people in the building, and he thinks Sheila is one of them. And he tells her that he is hoping for her support. So back at the hospital, Buck prepares a syringe of some kind to take out Matt, when all of a sudden the power goes out, not only in the hospital, but across the city. So now we know Fisk met with the guy from the power company to purposely cause a blackout, cause chaos, cause panic. And, this will let his task force run amok, and it will also give him an excuse to later on in the episode call for martial law. So Matt heard Buck coming, like I said, and left his room. Buck just finds an empty room. I figured Matt would at least take him out there, but no, he just leaves. So Matt goes home to his apartment, and he finds Frank in his apartment. Frank says he got a phone call from someone and promised that he would get Matt out alive. He tells Matt that there are vans full of bad guys outside, and if they come up, he is going to kill them. Frank asks him why he would take a bullet for Fisk, and Matt says, that's a good question. Which I'm like, it is a good question. And I guess even I was like, I think I would like an actual answer to that question. But I guess we'll just have to chalk it up to he's a hero, and he does the right thing when the chips are down. So Matt hears the task force enter the building. Cole North is wearing the Punisher logo on his jacket. Just as the mystery man that killed Hector did, hint, hint. The task force enters the apartment, and Daredevil and Frank start taking them out. And again, the action here was fine, but just unremarkable in my opinion. Lots of quick cuts, kind of muddy. I didn't love it, but it got the job done. Daredevil is upset that Frank is killing the people, even though he said he would. So Frank, I think he shoots Cole in the arm, and then he finds one of Cole's rounds with the Punisher logo on them and puts it together that Cole was the one that murdered Hector. So Cole tries to call for help on his walkie-talkie radio, and Daredevil knocks that out of his hand, throws it away. And Frank takes that radio so he can then listen in to the bad guys. Cole basically says, he has no regrets of what he did. And that, he stood with his fellow cops. And so Daredevil basically knocks him out. Frank then encourages Matt to kill him. He's like, what are you doing? Just end it. But Matt doesn't. So Frank goes to shoot him, and Matt stops him. So Frank just kills, another guy in the room. And Matt's like, what's wrong with you? And so they start yelling at each other until Matt hears a grenade coming in. So they jump out of the window. And this was a bit of a cheat, but I think I'm fine with it because it probably would have looked terrible if they didn't do it this way. Daredevil grabs Frank, they jump out, and then the next thing you see is from the inside of a car, they land on the car, which is several stories down. So I guess the implication is Matt slowed their descent with, his, um, you know, club and string or whatever you would call that. A part of me is like, there was so many, like, because it was like, I don't know, probably at least 3 or 4 stories high or whatever. A part of me is like, it seemed like a cheat that they didn't show that, but it probably would have just looked like CG nonsense, how we saw Daredevil move in the first couple episodes. I'm like, you know what? I'll take it. Just we'll fill in the gaps with our mind. And they look up and they see his whole apartment gets exploded. All of a sudden, a car shows up behind them, and it's Karen Page, and lo and behold, she was the one who called Punisher to help Matt. There probably is some convenience in that, her timing and everything, but hey, we get Deborah Ann Woll back, so I'll allow it. So back at Frank's place, Frank patches himself up while Karen patches Matt up. Matt tells Karen about how Vanessa hired Bullseye to take out Foggy, so now she knows. Karen agrees to help Matt find the dismissal motion that Foggy was going to file. By the way, I would kind of like it if Karen plays a pivotal role in taking Vanessa down in the future, because Foggy was her best friend as well. So I would like to see that. So they ask if Frank wants to come along, but he's staying behind. He says he's got things to do. And he does his Frank thing, like he doesn't care about anything. Matt tells him they will target him now too, and says that, and I like this line where Frank was like, if Fisk comes after him, he's going to shoot him, or he'll put a bullet in his fat head. And then Matt leaves, and Karen tells Frank that she doesn't buy this act, that he doesn't care. And Frank's basically like, hey, you asked me a favor and I did it, right? And she's like, yeah, thank you. And she leaves. So they're kind of setting up some maybe sexual tension between Frank and Karen. And in a minute here, in a bit, they're going to kind of set up maybe a possible love triangle between Frank, Karen, and Matt. And I don't know how I feel about that, because, first of all, Karen deserves better than both of them, to be honest. It never ends. It's never going to end well with either of those guys as your boyfriend. But I don't know. I think I ship Karen and Matt more so than Karen and Frank. But, maybe they'll change my mind with a little more writing between those two. So now Daniel, Fisk's communications director, he gives the city council Fisk's Safer Streets initiative, which is an insane plan to fight crime. Martial law, the task force, the curfew, all this stuff that we'll find out later. And he threatens to tell Fisk about any of them that say anything critical or not completely loyal to him. And again, not to harp on the real world stuff, but we see how the current administration is treating the media. They got rid of, I don't want to say legit media sources out of the White House briefing room, because a lot of mainstream media, even the left-leaning stuff, is pretty bad. But the ones they put in there are just right-wing sycophants that are never going to be critical of Trump, and that's what he likes. And so there is kind of a parallel here. He also threatens to expose secrets and financial crimes committed by the council members. So he's basically blackmailing them into playing along. And, this is where, I was talking about last year, they're kind of making us like be on the fence with this Daniel character. Like, oh, is there some good in him, or is he going to? To me, he's so slimy that I think he's kind of beyond redemption, especially after this scene. Um, so we'll see where him and BB York's relationship goes in the future. Speaking of which, we get another BB report of people rioting and looting during the blackout. And we get a scene here. This also kind of reminds us of, real world things as well, unfortunately, where a looter is killed by a cop, even though he was following the cop's instructions. I think the cop was like, put the stuff down, put your hands up or whatever. He complies. Cop shoots him anyways. And another cop comes over and he's like, whoa, what are you doing, man? This is just a kid. And he pulls like his like hat, stocking cap or whatever, like halfway down his face. And he's like, no, this is a masked vigilante. And oddly enough, like the cop that was kind of like, hey, this is messed up. I believe he has like the Punisher tattoo, but I think we like towards the end, there's a montage where I think we see him, kind of like having second thoughts. And so I don't know if they'll use that specific character again in the future, or if he's just a sign of like even some people on that side being like, whoa, this is a step too far, but I like that touch. So Matt tells Karen that he could hear her and Frank's heartbeat, back at the apartment, implying that, hey, is there something romantic going on between you two? And Karen basically says, if Frank's heartbeat was raised, she's sure it was just from the adrenaline. She asked Matt if she heard her heartbeat when she saw him. And he says yes. And then he also goes, I'm sure it was just adrenaline. So, they're setting up some playful banter here. And like I said, it seems like maybe some sort of love triangle there. And maybe we'll put Karen and Frank together because, right now Matt and Heather are together. I think that relationship's doomed. I think they are kind of setting up, though, Matt and Kirsten McDuffie as well. So who knows where they'll go. But, in the comics, Matt has dated like a million women, and it always just goes terribly wrong and tragically wrong in one way or the other. So maybe for Karen, I should hope that she doesn't end up with either of them. So they go to the place where Foggy's files are stored, and they find the motion to dismiss that they were looking for. And it says that due to the nature of the Red Hook port, no crime was committed in New York State or even the United States of America. So it turns out there's this old statute that made Red Hook a free port, which was free of jurisdiction from both the state and the country. And I'm wondering, like, is this based on anything in the real world? I've never heard of something like this, so I'm guessing maybe it's just made up for the show. But I'm wondering, like, was there like maybe for a time there was something considered a free port, and I don't know, but it's somewhat interesting. So they put it together that Fisk and Vanessa are using the port to basically legally launder money because it's not under any jurisdiction, so they can have gambling and all sorts of illegal stuff to, and basically it's a license to legally launder money. Matt says that the Fisks are trying to build their own city-state. So Matt and Karen decide to go check out that Red Hook port. But right on cue, Frank is listening to his radio, and it turns out that he hears the officers, the task force say that they are going to go to Red Hook. So he decides to go there. I was sure this was going to set up, Matt fights some guys. He's about to lose. He's about in trouble, and Punisher shows up to save the day. But nope, not the case. So Frank goes to Red Hook, and he gets in a fight with a bunch of these guys. And there's a scene where he takes out a lot of them. And again, the action here was fine. We've all been spoiled, I think, by John Wick and like the crisp action and choreography in those movies. Because now I see something like this, and I'm like, it's fine, but it's a little, not as good as it could be. And again, I don't need it to be as crisp as like John Wick, but I would like it to live up to the standards set by the Netflix shows. But like I said, eventually those guys, they outnumber Frank and they get the best of him. So we find out that Sheila, when she had her conversation with Gallo, was actually recording that conversation, and she betrayed Gallo and she played the recording to Fisk. So they basically betray or portray her as someone where we get the sense that like she knows what Fisk is doing is wrong, but she's basically just a coward that rubber stamps his stuff. And there's probably some of that going on in our real world today too. But it also is kind of like these, evil wins when good people do nothing, which I would say she's not necessarily good or all bad, but she took the coward's way out here. So Gallo gets in his car, and his normal driver has been replaced by a rookie cop he used to know, and he sees the fresh Punisher tattoo on his neck, so he puts it together that this guy is part of the task force. And I was thinking right there, if Gallo was smart, he would have just shot this guy, or at least like threatened to shoot him if he didn't get out, and he would just like drive himself home or somewhere safe. But of course, he doesn't do that. So next we get a scene where Frank wakes up strapped to a chair, and he's surrounded by Officer Powell and a bunch of members of the task force who are wearing the Punisher symbol on their chests. Officer Powell tells him that it's an honor to meet him. He tells him that he is a big admirer of his work, but he lost a lot of guys to Frank today. Officer Powell tells Frank that everything he does, he can now legally do with them, and he doesn't have to run anymore. And of course, what they don't get is that in Frank's eye, they're working for the biggest bad guy there is. And that, if he had his druthers, he would take him out. So he tells them, Powell tells them that they all idolize Frank and that it would be an honor to serve with him. Gallo is brought to Fisk and the task force. Fisk tells him that he was never there for the rank and file police officers, and that he is a cog in a broken machine. Now back to Frank. Frank tells Officer Powell that he is out of his mind and tells the task force that they are a bunch of clowns. He tells them that they do not know his pain and his loss, and what drives him to do the things that he's done. Gallo tells Fisk that he never stopped being Kingpin, that he can't. And then Fisk punches Gallo in the throat and drops him to his knees. Back to Frank. Frank tells Officer Powell that they do not see the world like he does, and that he would never serve with them. And so now back to Fisk, and again, this is the one scene I really hated during this episode. Fisk kills Gallo in a way that only a metahuman should be able to do. Again, I would have been fine if he just snapped his neck. I would have been like, okay. But the fact that he like mangles him in the way he does, that would take strength that he just a regular human wouldn't have. I was like, kind of rolling my eyes at it. I don't like that. Um, but we see how brash Fisk is getting, where he just kills this guy in front of this group of people, and he doesn't care. He's like, I own these people. They'll do what I want. They're all loyalists. Or if they get disloyal, they know what's going to happen. So Matt and Karen go to the port, which is crawling with task force guys, and I kind of like that they defy expectations here, because I was like, oh yeah, we're going to see Matt, sneak in and fight a bunch of these guys. But Karen tells Matt that if he goes in, he will either be killed or end up killing someone. And he's basically comes around to the fact that she's right. She says that Fisk is in control of the courts and the police, and kind of feels like they're in a helpless situation. And Matt says she's right, but they can fight him. But they need an army. I'm pretty sure I heard a rumor that the Jessica Jones was on set or confirmed. I don't know if she was confirmed, but a rumor that at least she was on set. And so, after he said that, I was kind of like, oh, we'll probably see one of her in this episode, but we didn't get that. But it would kind of be cool if they can get at least her. I don't know if they'll get Luke Cage, and I know, and I'm in the same camp. I did not like Iron Fist, but it'd be interesting to see if maybe they get some of those characters back going forward to help fight. So it goes to the next morning. The city power comes back on, and Heather has a meeting with Fisk. Fisk offers Heather the opportunity to be the administration's commissioner of mental health, and she accepts the position. Now, you got to imagine that he's only doing that to, again, have leverage over Matt. But you think he would also have to be leery that she knows that maybe Matt's told her the score, and that she could be a possible spy, which I think is what is going to happen. So I don't know, a little bit weird maybe, but we'll see how they write it going forward. So Fisk makes a public address to the people. He tells them that criminals were responsible for the blackout, first of all. This I found interesting. He says that Commissioner Gallo decided to resign and turn his back on the people in New York, which I'm like, you would think he was like, I have some sad news. Some criminals or vigilante of some kind killed Commissioner Gallo. Because it's like, is he just going to hide the body? Like, say that this guy, not only did he resign, he disappeared into the ether. Like no reporter is going to try to track that down and follow up. So it just seemed a little bit weird that that was his excuse. But he tells them that he's going to enact his Safer Streets initiative, effective immediately, which means all vigilante activity is illegal. There is an 8 p.m. curfew in effect, and he's also putting New York City under martial law. So that'll be an interesting vibe too going into season 2, where you got to imagine they'll be probably police on every street, and it'll be hard for him to go out as a vigilante after dark, that sort of thing. So Matt tells Karen that He says it was not the mask that saved him. It was him needing to believe in it that saved him. Which this line, I don't know, seemed a bit weird to me. A little clunky. I think they could have wrote something better here. I don't know. That line just didn't do it for me. He says his mistake was thinking that he was immune to the darkness, and he let the darkness creep inside him. He tells her that ever since Foggy died, he didn't know who he was anymore. And then we find out they're in the back room of Josie's bar. They go into the main bar room, and Matt meets with some of his allies, including Cherry and Detective Kim. And it looks like there's also some regular police officers that are on his side as well. So Fisk and Vanessa go to that room where they were, had Adam held prisoner. And we now see that they have the guy that's the swordsman, as well as a bunch of other vigilantes in cages. And then it's also revealed that among them, Frank Castle, also in a cage. And then they go downstairs and they have a fancy meal and basically celebrate their victory. They're on top of the world. Everything is coming up roses for the Fisks right now. So now we get a scene of kind of Matt's narration. I don't remember everything he says, but he's building up the fact that there's good people out there, ready to fight the good fight, and we get glimpses of people like BB Urich, Angela, who of course is going to become the White Tiger. You just have to imagine she will. Heather, who again, I get the sense here that she's going to be acting as a spy in the mayor's office. We also see Kirsten. So these will all presumably be people that will help Matt take the city back. We also get a quick glimpse of Bullseye. So, we have to wonder how he's going to factor in. Will we get a Bullseye actually fighting Fist? He already tried to take him out, and he has no love for Vanessa either. So, he might play a part. And Matt's narration ends with him calling New York City the city without fear. Credits. And then, of course, we get an after credits scene. And in this scene, Frank befriends a guard named Anthony Petruccio. He gets him to shake his hand, and then he breaks his arm and presumably escapes. Which, I'm fine with that, but a part of me is like, I don't know. I wouldn't have minded that being left in the air. Let us think about it for, how. I think it would have been a lost opportunity to have some conversations between Frank and Fisk, which could have been interesting. So I don't know about that decision to let him out so quickly, but it's good that we'll be seeing more Punisher down the line, and maybe he'll be in action sooner now. But I don't know. I think there could have been some good scenes if they would have kept him prisoner a little longer. But yeah, guys, overall, I thought that was a really solid finale. I think this season has been mostly positive. I think a little hit and miss again. I think my big takeaways are the action. I wish was better. I could use more courtroom drama. I think the courtroom stuff, and I think episode 3 I really liked. That was one of my episodes I like better. But then I think these last 2 episodes also very, very strong, and I think it went out on a very good note. So yeah, I think this definitely is up there as far as one of the better, Disney Plus Marvel shows. Which, it's interesting. I would put the Netflix version of Daredevil probably above all the Marvel, Disney Plus shows. But as far as like the newer ones, like the Disney Plus original ones, I would maybe still put Loki on top. I do like Loki quite a bit, but then this probably next. Um, so yeah, thumbs up, Marvel. Um, just I if if the action was better, um, I wouldn't have many complaints. And also tone down tone down Fisk. You know, it's okay if he's strong, but don't make him do crazy metahuman stuff. But that's it, guys. I'm curious what you guys think. Did you like the finale as much as I did? Did you have issues with it that I didn't mention? I'm curious to know. But if you will, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thumbs up, comments, positive reviews, all that good stuff is very welcome. And then you can listen on audio only if you prefer on your podcast catcher of choice. And you can follow me on social media, either on Twitter at Zach Jones Live, ZachJonesLive, or on Blue Sky at Enjoying the Review. But guys, until next time, I hope you're enjoying the review. Bye, guys.